What's going on, everyone? It's your boy Savvy, and welcome back to the Savvy Show. And in today's episode, I feel like this is going to be really cool and interesting and possibly educational one, because this is going to be about a faction within the SCP Foundation, which is called the SCP Ethics Committee Orientation. So, I heard about this in a few other reactions. However, I never knew in depth about what they're all about. So we shall see if they're good or evil. So with that being said, if you guys are excited for this animation reaction, please remember to smash that like button, smash the sub button if you're not part of the family, and hit that bell so you can stay plugged for each and every upload. So without any further ado, I'm not trying to waste any more time. Let's get this show started. Alrighty, SCP Ethics Committee Orientation. Let's go.
You're a member of an elite mobile task force, tracking down an anomaly in a rural village somewhere in the Swiss Alps that was recently detected by SCP Foundation field agents. According to all the current intel, you're dealing with a particularly deadly and hard-to-contain monster. A shape-shifting entity that can kill with a touch and assume the form of anyone it kills.
Oh, really?
If this thing somehow escaped the village and broke into a major population center, it could blend in perfectly and cause death on a massive scale.
What SCP is this?
It's up to you and your team to get this creature secured and contained before that can happen. You're going in heavily armed, with advanced sensory technology and several attack helicopters, each one loaded with plenty of powerful missiles.
I'm pretty sure this is just going to be like an introduction. This SCP is going to introduce, the ethics committee. But honestly, I really hope to find out what this SCP is, because he seems pretty interesting. Like, just saying.
One way or another, you're putting a stop to this thing. But the best laid plans of Mobile Task Force agents get often awry. The mission is a bloodbath. The shape-shifting anomaly has blended in perfectly with the innocent civilians living in the village.
Oh no.
Before you know it, half of your team have been killed, and you don't know which of the remaining team members are really themselves. This really couldn't have gone worse. And if you mess this up, not only is your life at risk, but so are the lives of everyone this anomaly happens to get close to. All of your superiors were killed or transformed in the battle with the shapeshifter, and you're now sitting at the top of your MTF's chain of command. The way you see it, there's only one option.
Okay, so this might be just a scenario for the orientation, like a legit orientation for someone that's, starting to be in the ethics committee role in the SCP Foundation. That'd be kind of cool, but I hope this is a real thing.
You radio up to air support, alerting the several attack choppers circling the village. You tell them to rain fire and destroy the whole place. That's the only way to be sure to take out the anomaly. Things have gone beyond the point of easy containment. You sprint past the village limits as the volley of missiles and firebombs raze the formerly quiet settlement to the ground.
Jeez, they just dropped a buster call on them. Oh my goodness. If y'all One Piece fans, you guys know where that came from.
Other than the task force members in the helicopters, you're the only survivor. Over 320 people are dead. But on the upside, the remains of the shape-shifting anomaly were found amongst the rubble by Foundation personnel.
They killed him.
You prevented whatever horrors it would have caused if it had been allowed to escape.
But you
Mission accomplished. But it's not over yet. When you solemnly return to the containment site you've been deployed from, your superiors order you to go pay a visit to Conference Room 2. You correctly assume that it's some kind of disciplinary meeting. Maybe the site director chewing you out for shoddy work, but ultimately congratulating you for doing what needed to be done under pressure.
Let's see.
After all, making the tough decisions is what working for the SCP Foundation is all about.
Is that right?
But when you arrive in the conference room, you're sitting across from a woman you've never seen before. She's tall, with hard, stern-looking features, and a plain but well-tailored suit. Despite being a hardened soldier on the Foundation payroll, something about this woman makes you nervous. She smiles and says, "Hello, I'm with the Foundation Ethics Committee. We need to have a word." For reasons you don't quite understand, you start to break into a cold sweat. The Ethics Committee?
You can probably figure it
just
out.
Existed to scare Foundation employees. I didn't know they had actual authority. But that's where you made a terrible mistake. And from the tight smile on the agent's face, you can tell that the Foundation Ethics Committee has a lot more power than you've ever imagined. Perhaps you know them from the jokes that float around the Foundation circles. How many members of the Ethics Committee does it take to change a light bulb? None. The Ethics Committee can't change anything. Perhaps you heard about the O5 Council's disdain for them. Those bureaucratic pencil pushers with all their rubber stamps and red tape.
Oh, God.
The jokes don't seem so funny now, though. The Ethics Committee representative clears her throat and tells you that you've been reassigned, effective immediately.
Bro, that's foul. But I mean, he saw his job though, so I guess it's not that bad. But for them to just have that much power, like boom, you're off completely, like without any explanation or anything. Wild.
You're now under the employ of the Foundation Ethics Committee,
Wait,
and
what?
this change is non-negotiable.
Wait, he's now under the employ of the wait, so he's part of the ethics committee now? What the hell?
You try to state your case in blind panic. Part of you thinks that being reassigned to the Ethics Committee after the mistake you just made is code for being taken into a windowless room and shot in the back of your head.
Yeah.
But the agent insists that really isn't the case. The Ethics Committee hates codes and euphemisms. They don't say terminated, they say killed. Because at the Ethics Committee, clarity of language is extremely important.
Okay.
They don't sanitize any horrific acts that need to be performed for the sake of containment. After all, it's their job to look these horrors in the face and give the final yes or no on whether they're carried out.
Dang.
As you may know, the SCP Foundation is essentially above all external law. No government, no organization, and no individual can tell them what to do. The 13 members of the O5 Council have almost unlimited knowledge at their disposal, as well as technology that the rest of the world could only ever dream of. With a setup like that, it would be easy to give in to corruption and go mad with power. If they wanted to, they could abandon their mission of protecting humanity from the shadows, and instead rule the world with an iron fist. That's where the all-important role of the Foundation Ethics Committee comes in. As Uncle Ben once said, with great power comes great responsibility.
Did they really actually pull Uncle Ben from Spider-Man in this? Okay. Yo, what? Alrighty then.
Just as the O5 Council wields the power, the Ethics Committee wields the responsibility.
Oh,
They
got it.
remind the whole organization that they are here to serve the world, not the other way around.
That's interesting because there's a case for you to say like, yeah, the SCP Foundation could control the world, but they have someone in tandem for them to stop, which is the ethics committee, compared to other groups where they don't have that, and they could probably just take over the world if they want to. But, you know.
Think of them as the conscience of the SCP Foundation. They decide what's morally acceptable for the Foundation to do in pursuit of its goals, to make sure that those who fight monsters don't become monsters themselves.
Oh.
As Nietzsche famously said, if you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss
gazes
also
onto you.
gazes into you.
Yep.
Right now, you very much feel like you're staring into the abyss, as the Ethics Committee representative calmly explains the situation to you. An important thing to remember about the Foundation is that it must be cold, not cruel. The second that the harm it causes is in excess of the positive results of the Foundation's actions, it's time for the Ethics Committee to step in and dole out some discipline.
Okay.
It is the Ethics Committee's job to balance the moral cost of every action performed by the Foundation, from the degree of collateral damage permissible in the field to the ways that D-classes can be ethically used in testing. While some hardcore Foundation loyalists may say that people like the Ethics Committee are standing in the way of true progress, giving yourself wholly to the mission without any ethical safeguards can be a dangerous line to walk. At that point, what's separating the Foundation from the Global Occult Coalition or the Chaos Insurgency?
True.
Or even worse, their nightmarish alternate selves from the universe of
Oh
SCP
my God,
1730
Site 13.
and SCP 5000. While the Foundation
5,000. I'm coming to talk to you soon. Don't worry. Stay put. I'm coming for you.
occasionally needs to do some truly horrific things in order to secure, contain, and protect, it is the Ethics Committee that keeps them on the moral high ground. All of this seems pretty complicated to you, as you sit, still fearing for your life in conference room 2. The Ethics Committee agent explains that it's actually all quite simple once you get used to it. The Ethics Committee uses a moral framework known as utilitarianism. Think of it like the product of morality and math. Specifically, the committee uses an ethical system known as negative utilitarianism. This system revolves around the principle of harm reduction. The committee tries to modify every action taken to cause the least amount of possible suffering in a situation, the goal being to eliminate any unnecessary suffering from action. Take your decision, for example, the Ethics Committee representative says. Your actions, namely the destruction of the village, caused a great deal of suffering. However, considering the damage the anomaly could have caused after your team lost control of the situation, it's clear that your motivation was ultimately pure harm reduction.
Yeah.
I admire that kind of thinking in a high-pressure situation. You feel a cool wave of relief wash over you. It feels safe to assume at this point that this probably isn't just a big front for your immediate termination. The agent sitting across from you seems to sense that that's what you're thinking, and assures you that she's being nothing but honest with you.
Oh, okay.
The ethics committee has no need to be petty.
Nice.
They know everything, after all. And that's not an exaggeration. Their clearance is basically the equivalent to level 5, the highest in the Foundation.
Dang.
Every line ever redacted from an SCP Foundation file they were privy to. Every secret the Foundation has ever kept, they have absolute access to. And every decision the Foundation has ever made, the Ethics Committee has always had the final say.
Really?
With veto power even over the O5 Council.
Whoa, 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 whoa. They're basically on par with the O5 Council. It seems like they have more power than the O5 Council. I know they're trying to make it seem like the Ethics Committee is like the conscience of the O5 Council, of the SCP Foundation, and the O5 Council is like the, you know, the top tier, the top, like the tippity top of power. But with this, it seems like they don't have as much power as the Ethics Committee. They even have power to veto the O5 Council. Like, what? That was just wild.
And most importantly, all members of the Ethics Committee are former Foundation personnel, site directors, researchers, mobile task force operatives, all people whose decisions have caused pain and death. Much like jury duty, the responsibility is random and non-negotiable.
Dang.
What you're experiencing right now isn't a normal disciplinary hearing. It's an employee orientation.
Oh,
the
wow.
cruel irony for a department of the Foundation devoted to ethical conduct is that it's actually complicit in pretty much all of the Foundation's worst moral crimes. After all, every action that the Foundation has ever performed has been performed with the permission and...
I think that's the deer. 2845, I think that's the deer. Yo, the rituals, oh my god, to keep them in containment. But yo.
And cooperation of the Ethics Committee. Take the infamous Procedure 110 Montauk, used to prevent the victims of SCP-231 giving birth. The Ethics Committee had a key role in designing the horrific procedure, and now they have to live with the soul-crushing knowledge of exactly what that procedure entails. And soon, you will too. Just one of the many perks of joining the committee. It isn't the easiest job, the representative tells you. She's got the steely blank eyes of someone who has seen some things that people were never meant to see. She continues, before we conclude the first part of your orientation, I suppose I should tell you about the Sowing Circle. That'll give you a good idea of what you're in for. She tells you that the Sowing Circle was the anomaly discussed in the 2017 Ethics Committee Roundtable. It's an anomaly so secretive that it was never given an official containment number or classification. But it was proposed as a solution to one of the Foundation's most nightmarish problems, the shortage of human infants. It is an ugly truth about the Foundation that a decent number of anomalies, such as SCP-2845 the Deer, require the sacrifice of live children as part of their containment procedures.
Dang.
For years, the Foundation has been stealing children from orphanages for the use in these rituals.
I didn't even think about
that. The Sowing
that.
Circle could solve this problem. It was a mummified human corpse, wreathed in the circle of its own dried-out intestines. The mummy produced seeds which, if consumed, could allow human women to produce litters of 12 babies with an 8-hour gestation period.
Litters? Litters of yo, the terminology these dudes are using, bro. It's hilarious.
Like the litters of a sow.
Oh my god.
This would solve the baby shortage.
Interesting.
It was the job of the Ethics Committee to decide what would be the most ethical way to use this anomaly. In the end, despite their own personal moral disgust at the actions, their philosophy of harm reduction led them to one conclusion: using the device to impregnate already brain-dead patients, effectively turning them into comatose infant factories whose only purpose was to be used in horrific containment procedures. But ultimately, the sacrifice would pale compared to the pain averted, seeing as millions, if not billions, would be under threat from some of these entities being released. Not that this makes the knowledge of what needs to be done any easier to handle on a personal level, but of course after what you did at the village, you know this feeling all too well already. The pain and the guilt you felt at making that decision is going to follow you your whole life. And now, you're about to have countless more experiences piled on top. It's your burden, your duty, your job.
That's so
The Ethics
cool.
Committee agent forces a weak smile. She says, "Of course, nobody said the job was easy, but somebody needs to do it." Now check out SCP-001.
Dang, that was so cool. That's how they hire people from the ethics committee. That's insane. I find out how much power they have. I never would imagine they could veto the O5 Council in any shape or form. So, yo, these guys are nothing to sneeze at, man. So with that being said, if you guys enjoyed this animation reaction, please remember to smash that like button, smash the sub button, and smash that bell so you can stay plugged for every single episode on the channel. So with that being said, unfortunately, that concludes today's episode as well. However, I'll catch you guys